How often do you get a chance to talk to somebody where they can cover how to build machine learning, artificial intelligence at the edge, solve complex problems, really do amazing stuff, and on top of that, you get to talk about great coffee and the best burgers in the world. This is that conversation, and it starts now. What's up, everybody? This is Eric Wright, the host of the DiscoPosse podcast, and thank you for watching, listening, and doing all the things. I'm really proud of an amazing conversation you're about to watch with Rob Telson. Rob's the VP of Worldwide Sales and Marketing at BrainChip. While he says he's a VP of Sales and Marketing, he's surprisingly technical, and more that he downplayed his skills. And the fun part about this conversation is we get to talk about a lot more than just what happens in the world of machine learning and AI. First of all, you get to find out what the deal is with BrainChip. They're doing some really amazing stuff. We get to dig into their actual processor itself and the technology behind it, the things that get done as a result. It's a lot of fun. I'm a fan, really cool, and you're definitely going to want to check it out. Follow the links down below if you want to see more about BrainChip. Plus, we get to talk about the fun of great burgers and great coffee from around the world. Rob is a well-traveled person who's been very successful at building teams and really inspiring people to do things and help people throughout their career. So this is really an end-to-end fun conversation, something you're going to enjoy. And of course, I got to give a shout out to the folks that make this possible, and that is our friends over at Veeam Software. So if you want to do this, click on the link, do the thing, head down below, go to vee.am/DiscoPosse, and they have everything you need for your data protection needs all in one spot. Whether it's on-premises, in the cloud, virtualization, bare metal, Office 365, Slack. I don't know why I'm pointing around like this. Go to Veeam, go to vee.am/DiscoPosse. Super fun, great team, love the technology, love the community, highly recommended. Also, we've got some really cool big announcements that are coming soon around supporters of the podcast. But in the meantime, celebrate the amazing, the incredible flavors of a diabolical coffee, the devilishly good flavors. Plus, you get an amazing shirt if you want to go today, because for a limited time, we've got an independent artist, Zine Rashidi, Devil's Breath. It's an amazing design. Head over there, you get some devilishly good coffee, diabolically awesome swag. Go to diabolicalcoffee.com. It's that easy. And I'm doing a ton of other stuff around helping other folks around mentoring and teaching and just general learning. I've got stuff that's going on with Pluralsight and all these really fun projects that are happening. But if you want to see kind of where it's all centered out of, the best way to go is just head right on over to rapidmatter.io or rapidmatter.com if you happen to type in the wrong one, because I'm doing a ton, especially where we're looking at work that we can do in underrepresented communities to help folks to bring themselves forward and introduce people to technology and learning that they may not have had access to. That's the amazing thing about technology as we bring it closer. Speaking of technology that's going to be amazing and bringing closer, you are about to find out about BrainChip. You're going to learn about Rob Telson, his background. It was really a lot of fun to have this conversation. So with that, this is Rob Telson, BrainChip, awesome, fun, burgers, mentoring. It's on now. Rob, thank you very much. I was, first of all, I get excited by being able to see a name that shows up that as a human is somebody that is very interesting to chat with. Now, I've been lucky. I've gone over some of your own content, and you're a producer of content. You've got a really solid voice and a great way of really leading a discussion, which is cool. And on top of that, I looked at BrainChip and I was pretty darned excited about the potential of what's there. So before I jump in and I start just gushing over the good stuff, I did want to, for folks that are new to you, Rob, if you want to give a quick introduction, and we'll talk about yourself. We'll talk about BrainChip, the Akita platform, which is really cool, the technology and kind of what's being done with it. And we'll kind of run from there, if that's all right.
Yeah, well, Eric, thank you very much for first of all, for having me on the podcast. And likewise, I've had the opportunity to listen to some of your podcasts, and you've had some pretty talented people on. And so I'm actually excited and honored to be here. And I feel like I have some big shoes to fill in the discussion, right? But just real quickly for the listeners out there, BrainChip's a semiconductor manufacturer, and we've developed an artificial intelligence processor, and it's architected to function similar to a brain, and it's based off of continually learning as we go on the device that we're implemented in, and it's processes without any dependency on the cloud. And that will become a lot of our discussion today. And last of all, it's architected in a way that it consumes very little power or energy. And by doing that, it gives you a lot of flexibility and functionality to do a lot of things in the world of compute, a lot that's becoming very common to all of us, but's going to evolve over time. But before I talk more about BrainChip and our processor, which is called Akita. And for those listening, Akita means spike, and we'll get into that in more detail. I really want to talk about the problem that we see happening and why Akita is going to play a major role in solving a lot of potential challenges in technology moving forward. So, right. So what I want to bring up is three words that in my world mean the same thing. And there's a lot of technologists out there that will give you buts, ifs, ands, whats, and so on. But the reality is we're talking about the same thing. So let's think of IoT-based devices, and let's think of edge-based devices, and let's think of endpoint devices. They all mean basically the same thing. And that is, we're really, really far away from the cloud. We're doing a lot of compute. And in most cases, especially as we evolve, that compute goes to the cloud, and then it goes from the cloud back to the device. Okay. And I'm going to reference edge-based devices, and I'm going to reference, instead of calling them AI processors, deep learning accelerators, GPUs, NPUs, I'm going to use the word AI engine, the engine that's processing this information. So if we look at the evolution of edge, and we look at the evolution of these devices, over the next 5 years, we're looking at hundreds of billions of devices. And these hundreds of billions of devices are going to be demanding easy access of information to the cloud and back. And to put that into perspective, we're looking at, I don't know, I think it's forecasted there's going to be 90 zettabytes of data going from edge-based devices to the cloud and back. So we all need to, take a step to the side, put ourselves in the driver's seat of our car, and realize we've just hit a traffic jam. And what that means to anyone who has a smartphone right now, or has a personal assistant, voice personal assistant at home, like an Alexa, or let's say using Siri, an Apple-based device. I don't know about you, but there are times when I've said, Siri, directions to this address, and Siri says, I cannot help you right now. Or, play Fleetwood Mac, can't help you right now. Okay. So what's going on there is that the device is trying to communicate to the cloud, but doesn't have access to it. And we've all just been accustomed to dealing with that, for those that have experienced that. And you just wait a couple seconds or whatever, and you move on. But let's fast forward. Let's fast forward to this evolution of edge-based devices. And let's think about vehicles. Let's think about unmanned vehicles. Let's think about flying vehicles. Let's think about drones. Let's move into medical device applications. Let's move into industrial applications. We've got an issue. 4 doctors in a remote location trying to save someone's life needing access to the internet, and they don't have bandwidth to the cloud. Okay, the device needs to be able to do some processing on the device. And that's where we see Akita making some massive impacts. The other thing that Akita can do, which gets really exciting, is has the ability to learn on the device. We call that one-shot training or one-shot learning. So you're adding new images, you're adding new functionality to the device as you go. This is the growth and evolution of artificial intelligence. And we're able to do that because we are architected in an advanced way using what's called the neuromorphic computing architecture. And neuromorphic computing is architected to function much like a brain. And what I mean by that is, for our listeners and for you, Eric, right now your brain is moving and it's consuming energy and it's listening to everything I'm saying. That is important to you. But being a fan of yours, I would hope you have a cup of diabolical coffee sitting right by your side, right? And you can smell that fresh coffee, but your brain's not spending a lot of time on that. And it's not spending a lot of time recognizing that your hands are resting and you're touching something and your feet are touching something. And or there's
seen.
Exactly. So what going back to what I said earlier, Akita is the it's also references spike. We focus on spiking or events, and that's what makes us extremely unique and extremely advantageous as we move into this next generation of AI. Is that, look, we can function and focus on all these different things that are going on, but we're consuming all of our energy on the event that's taking place right now. Their traditional engines, as I referenced before, could mean a lot of different things. Those traditional engines have to process and compute all of this information. They are burning, they're consuming so much energy and power, and they're moving faster and faster and faster to solve the same problem that we're going to solve in using microwatts to milliwatts and using a lot less energy and gives us a lot more flexibility. So I know I said a lot there, but that's giving you a little bit about BrainChip.
Well, and I'd say that's actually the perfect segue to something that's very important about this, the challenge that we're trying to solve, right? Is that it's one thing for me to yell into my phone like, Siri, find the closest Tim Hortons or whatever. Sorry, I guess I should say Dunkin' Donuts. Find the closest Dunkin' Donuts, and yeah, I'm sorry I can't help you right now. You're like, oh, darn it, Siri. Like that's fine. I'll open Google and I'll say it's got a slow connection. And I kind of get through it. It's very different than system to system, which is where, like, you talk about, rolling, devices that are using LiDAR and ultimately need to communicate, and they need to do a lot of processing locally because they have to have certain amounts of asynchronous communications, and they cannot rely on every transaction being decision driving. So they have to be able to make decisions locally. So we do all this and it sounds fantastic. Everybody says, well, it's easy. Why don't you just move processing closer to the edge, closer to the workload, whatever? Great. Sounds great, right? It sounds as great as the numbers that we hear when we think about the scale that we're tackling. But then the first thing you think is, well, how do I drive this? Like, literally the power to do this stuff in the data center today or in the cloud, a fantastic amount of power required to run GPUs and TPUs and all these things. So when you move to the edge now, this is the thing. Like, you're talking about milliwatt representation of power usage. Just a fundamental shift in the ability of technology to act in the way that what Akita is doing, yet not burn the planet down like Bitcoin miners doing this crazy blockchain processing.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm going to bring up an example again of a scenario, and I don't want to get over dramatic, but I think we always have to visualize these types of scenarios. They are closer to us than we realize. But the proliferation of electric vehicles, the proliferation of vehicles, and the amount of compute that's taking place in the vehicles of today and tomorrow. The car is designed to do a lot of of great things. And I'm a geek, so I get really excited about functionality. Useless functionality usually gets me to buy something that I'll never use. So what happens though is that if we don't have the ability to have some of this compute and decision making on the device, and we're going to find a scenario where you're driving a car and that car sees a human, and it knows what it needs to do is swerve hard right and get out of the way. Now, that hard right to get out of the way could actually end up causing another impact, and if it's dependent upon communicating with an external device, whether it be the cloud or something else, it's going to make that hard right, whether it communicates or not. There is a human there. And then you find out it's a plastic bag, right? Didn't need to make the hard right. So we need to advance. And that's what we're looking at. And the second thing that what you brought up there, which, my head was spinning a mile a minute going, okay, how do I want to respond here? But, you start to take a look at devices that do consume a lot of energy. And one device that everybody has in their home is the refrigerator. It consumes a lot of energy. And we look at that as these consumer white goods appliances, in which Akita is going to help reduce the amount of energy that's being consumed. We look at it and we say, in the future, you're going to want to have the ability to recognize by odor whether your food is stale or it has a lifespan. How do we do that? And Akita has that capability. One thing I didn't mention that I'll dovetail on is that we focus on 5 sensor modalities, and 2 are very common in the world of AI processing today, and that's image or object detection, very similar to the plastic bag and what's out there and what's going on, and the other one is voice or keywords, and again, something very common in a lot of the functionality that we have today. But there's 3 other modalities that will become impactful in our everyday lives, and one is the ability to smell or olfactory. One is the ability to touch or vibration, and which is somatosensory, and then the other one is taste, gustatory. And between all of those 5 sensor modalities, that's where BrainChip has kind of hung their hat and said, okay, well, if we can process vibration, then we can help in industrial applications and make things more efficient. We can save infrastructure of the roads and bridges, and we can actually help with prosthesis. And so people that have prosthetics can now feel by having vibration detect somewhere else in their body. And we've now seen with from olfactory side of things, and they always say it's you hit these points, inflection points by random. You design it all you want, but these random events happen. You have what's called VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, which are breath markers. And by these VOCs, you can detect different diseases, illnesses, viruses, and even different types of cancers. So with the right systems and the right engine, you can do a lot of good. You can start to make a lot of impact in areas that we only dreamed of 5 years ago.
And I think that's the important thing too when we think of any solution. And what I love is enabling solutions in what you're talking about, what you and the team are tackling by bringing Akita to the market, is that this is the old what's this show, *Halt and Catch Fire*. My favorite. If anybody's watched that one, it's a famous sort of early episode. He says, this is, computers aren't the thing; they're the thing that gets you to the thing.
Mhm.
And so we look at what this does is as an incredible enabling function now, is that we can move to enabling prosthetics to be touch detecting. And this is the stuff, like the reason why we went to the moon. And people say like, oh, well, there's no one living on the moon. Why did we go to the moon? And when we
Yeah.
did, well, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but most of the things in your house were engineered and discovered as a result of research that we did in that. We know why we call it a moonshot.
Yeah.
And so now you have, by giving this capability to the research community, to the industrial community. So as we go from industry 4.0, which I didn't realize we were already there, to 5.0 or whatever it is, like this is the huge leaps that can be done by those communities and those creators and those researchers that are going to tackle, like I said, big problems. This is like what quantum as a concept brought, and it's so far out of the realm of most people's mathematical understanding that it becomes like one day. But it's when you show this and you bring this and you show people what can be done now with this capability, this is a lot closer to the use cases that people understand, I think, than those sort of massive concepts like Elon landing us on Mars and such.
Yeah, it's been tremendously satisfying on a daily basis. We are constantly on calls with current customers and future customers and dreamers and visionaries, and I'm going to take this conversation twofold. Number one is I think it's really, really important for people to understand in the world of artificial intelligence, it's very complex. And a lot of people are addressing these challenges and problems and solving them a variety of different ways. So what I'm trying to do is communicate that there's an ecosystem out there. And within that ecosystem, you need to have sensors that can detect what's going on. You need to have a data set in order to understand what you're trying to detect. And you need to have an engine that can take all that information and accurately predict and accurately provide feedback that you can depend on. So again, we are the engine. But one of the things I brought up before when I talked about VOCs, and it's something that we've had some success with, is for example, working with a couple of partners, but one in specific that's over in Israel that was able to develop some type of a breathalyzer that you could breathe into, and it can capture information. And the goal was to recognize different types of viruses or disease. And it just so happened that as they were building this product, COVID hit us. Right. So now let's apply it to COVID. And hey, we need an engine. If we get data sets and we get all this information, what engine is low power, can operate quickly, and provide us the accuracy, right? And so we were hitting 93, 94% accuracy on these data sets to determine COVID positive, COVID negative. And that's one example of what we're doing.
It's amazing to think of, and like you talked about OneShot, and for anybody that wants to, pause the show and go understand what it means to be able to do zero shot, one shot, and what the impact in the way this does versus the mass data set continuous learning. It's a big change. And now to be able to bring one shot learning close to where it needs to be processed, because the other problem we've got is the data sets in order to do continuous training are potentially massive. And while we've got 5G and everybody's like, oh, well, 5G is going to be here and it's going to save the world. Well, no, you know what's going to happen with 5G? Instagram. That's what's going to happen. YouTube, Hulu. Like that's the reason why 5G is going to be full by the time it gets here fully is because we are always pacing well ahead of the capabilities with the content. And now if we look at, we're effectively going right alongside your latest, Hulu release or Game of Thrones or whatever craziness that people are streaming. And you're trying to do like legitimate real time neural processing. This is why being able to bring that processing and do it there, it's a significant need, and
Yeah.
it's a huge boost in like I said, because right now the devices aren't capable to do it without a significant amount of power, or like these are large processing units deemed to be local. So doing this at a small scale with low power is game changing, to pardon the overused phrase.
Yeah, it's exciting, and we're at a point where we have customers, and our business model is made up of the fact that we sell silicon, and we're in volume production right now, and we also license our IP. So they get an encrypted IP that they can design into their system on a chip, and that then AI functionality is on that device moving forward. And I think at a time like this, this is huge. I mean, I have one of my colleagues says, Rob, you're on this Jerry Maguire moment where I'm saying, we have this semiconductor challenges and manufacturing and shortages, and there are a lot of great technologies in the AI sandbox, all trying to solve specific problems and broad problems. There are only a few of us that are licensing the technology as IP. So for the others, they're all scrambling to get wafer capacity and to get in line. And my Jerry Maguire moment is just made up of the fact that how great is it that some of these companies can incorporate our IP into their system on a chip, rely less on the supply chains and the challenges that will exist for a period of time, and be able to make a move as a market mover and have products with a lot of functionality on it. So we see that, and I'll stop talking about my Jerry Maguire moment, but I do like to emphasize, we have two business models that we're leveraging, and we're seeing success in both of them. And the other thing is I look at it and we have two paths, right? One is, as you mentioned, there's a lot of really exciting AI applications, and some of them are more scientific than commercial focused. And we have a unique crossroads where you want to address a lot of these scientific solutions because they're really cool, and you're going to do something really good and beneficial, and we use that word, beneficial AI, and I think that's important. But also we have a business to run, and we are in the process of making sure that we have a commercialized product that all of our customers and future customers will have a lot of success with.
And I got to call that something which is, so thank you for using the best phrase on earth, because you, the way you describe things, you can tell that you're very people focused, even in understanding the technology. And we talked at the start, like where we can go with how deep we can talk about the tech. And first of all, you go far deeper than you would even give yourself credit to be able to do. And I'm sure we could go further, but you call it future customers. That may seem like a throwaway to some people. I've worked with a lot of sales organizations, and every time I hear the word prospect, I cringe a little. And it's a difference in the way that you think about it, by the way it's not even a thing you fight to make sure you don't say. It's natural, like you just said. We're people with work with today, future customers. I've got a huge respect, and so there's
Thank you.
something in you you're solution and people focused. What brought you to that, Rob? We're going to dig into the Rob portion of the show right now, because I want to unpack this, because it's actually very rare for a senior sales leader to not kind of just slip up and say, we were talking to a couple of prospects today. Like, and it seems like a small thing. And I have a massive respect. First of all, I should say this too. I got to couch this with, look, I've never, as they say, carried a bag for an organization. I've got a huge respect. Everyone's in sales to some degree. I've been lucky that I don't carry a quota for it. So I don't live without my sales teams doing what they do, and I furnish them with the tools to do what they do.
Right.
But you split this line where you have this there's something different. I want to figure out where that comes from.
Okay. All right, let's dig into it. What do you want to know?
So what was your background? I noticed that through your career, you've actually been pretty consistently in this account executive sales track. Like you've always sort of come in there. So what drew you to that? And then kind of what drew you to the way in which you approach it?
Well, I'm going to go back far. It sounds like it's a short path, but when I just had my birthday yesterday, it's been a while.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you. I went to school to become a lawyer, and I came home from my final interview to go to law school, and I sat down with my parents and I explained to them that, okay, I start in 3 months, and Dad, you're going to owe X amount of dollars when all is said and done for me to go to law school. And it was a very matter-of-fact statement. And my father looked at me and he said, oh, hold on a second. And he said, I never said I would pay for law school. You're on your own. My recommendation is you go get a job, go do something, and then figure out whether you want to go. So the next day I went out and started interviewing for jobs, and I ended up getting a job selling mailing and shipping systems, and learning about warehouses, learning about packaging devices, and just walking door to door in a suit and tie and talking to guys in warehouses and selling products. The only thing I realized was I was really darn good at it. And I was living at home and I was making a lot of money. And I'm like, wow, who needs law school, right? And about that time, we were transitioning to Windows-based operating systems. And I had the one thing I really look back at when parents make investments in their children. My father was really into buying computers before computers were something that everyone could get their hands on. And he had chosen Apple. So we had Macs. So I had learned how to work on a Mac OS. So by the time Windows was introduced, it had a lot of the same feel. So the company I was working for had introduced a Windows-based operating, shipping, and mailing system, and no one knew how to use it. No one knew how to operate it. And I sat down and started tinkering with it. And before I knew it, I was, part of a Fortune 500 company, sitting with the CEO of the company, in Puerto Rico, teaching him how to use the system. And my sales career kind of took off. And it immediately took me into the most random decision I've ever made in my life, which was to move from this company into EDA, electronic design automation. And I got a job with a very large EDA firm that brought 2 guys in that had no engineering background and said, one of you as a sales guy will learn how to navigate all the way to the upper echelons of senior executives, and one of you won't. And within 6 months, most likely one of you won't be here. That wasn't me. I was there, and was able to have a lot of success. And then that led to startups. That's when, things in technology were starting to take off. The internet was becoming something of a thing. And this was back in the day when went to startups and you tried to make some money. And I was very fortunate. I used the phrase, "I'd rather be lucky than good." I was really lucky to be at the right place at the right time, which led to intellectual property. And again, another startup, then which led to a corporate career of sales organizations, evolving into large sales organizations, evolving into sales leadership, and being a part of a phenomenal run with a great group of people at a company called ARM, and doing that for a long time, and running their sales for the Americas, as well as running their sales for manufacturing, which most of it was done over in Asia. And then transitioning to the second phase, I call it the second phase of my life, which is I want to do another startup. I've done this before. I know what we're doing, and I know what I'm looking for. And it just so happened that Anil Mankar was a customer of mine, and we've done business together. And Anil Mankar is one of the co-founders of BrainChip. And we were having a discussion, and he said, "Rob, it'd be great if you could join our company. We need to build a sales and marketing organization, and I think you'd be phenomenal at doing it." Which led to, yeah, sure, why not? And here we are months later, and we're starting to make impact. We're things that we've put in place all seem to be executing. So this to me is a very, very exciting time for BrainChip, and to be a part of this cycle, this revolution, is really cool. So, and that might be a little long what I just went through, but
it's perfect. It's it's a beautiful story, because it tells you, when we choose a place to be, one of the most fundamental parts of the why is because we go there there's people that we care enough about to give ourselves to their life via the startup. Like the amount of time we spend supporting each other and supporting the organization, and the sacrifice of families. It's no insignificant step to move to the startup landscape, and especially you went what was effectively the OG startups, right? This is startups now. I've got 4 startups that I'm running right now. I mean, they're not startups. I've got a coffee business. I've got an affiliate website. I've got a podcast. I work at a startup, which is not really a startup because it's a 12-year-old company that was just acquired by IBM. But there was no other option. Like there was Fairchild Semiconductor that was like the crazy hero story of how Silicon Valley truly became Silicon Valley.
Right.
But the stories that we don't hear are how many did try and get started, and they're very dominantly in the manufacturing and physical stuff. There was no AWS. There was no, like, you could just whip up a startup at a Starbucks. It's like, so the leap of faith was even more faithful in the first time that you did it. And then now, so are you what's they call it, like, unemployable, right? You can't go back to the big company again. It's always a very interesting thing, is once you hit a certain phase of growth of an organization, quite often you look back and you say, the biggest impact I feel like I've had was, as it turns out, growing this company from 1 million to 10 million or whatever. And I find a lot of folks, they really are like kind of like a SWAT team for a growth phase. But you've spanned every phase through different ways in which you've been in the industry. So I'm curious if you've got a kind of a favorite size or favorite thing about building the team and building the organization.
It's funny. I'm reflecting on, and I was writing an email earlier today to my current team. We have some really young guys, very talented individuals that have a lot of development to do. But I have some pretty senior guys that have actually worked for me for a while in different environments. And I was reflecting on a comment by one of the young guys who was just talking about the camaraderie of the team that we've built, and how we're there for each other, and the fact that he was highlighting this level of comfort and excitement every day. It's almost like a family. And I think what I've been able to do, I don't know why, there's no magic recipe, but it's a team, it's an organization, and it's to get everybody entrusting in each other and being there, and then being able to pick up the slack when we need to pick up the slack, being able to realize what we've just done is not good enough, we have to do better, and have that mindset to win. And so that's carried on with me from very young organizations with a few people to very large organizations. And I think that's, part of the fun. And so the other thing, what I at this point in my career, what I really, really enjoy is having the frank and candid conversations, almost like a mentor. And there's a fine line when you're managing people and working with them and mentoring them about what could be some personal dynamics and so on. But when I look back at people that have worked for me and worked with me, and I'd rather say worked with me than for me, we still keep in touch. We communicate a lot, and there's a lot of frank dialogue about, well, what would you do in this situation? And it doesn't have to be business related. It can be life as well. And to me, that's very fulfilling, more like a friendship. And I think that's, when you look back at life, it's one of those things you have to look at. How were you measured? What did you do? And I had the opportunity to do an executive management program called the Program for Leadership Development through Harvard Business School. And one of the most dynamic individuals of his time was Clayton Christensen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Who we recently lost not long ago, actually, I guess.
Yeah. And I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with him. For those who don't know, Clayton Christensen is the author of Innovator's Dilemma. But then he had a follow-on book after he had a stroke, and it was called Your Life and How Will You Be Measured? And so as we were all evolving, young and aggressive and wanting to capture the world, he was on the other side saying, does it really matter? I mean, what about your family? What about what mark are you leaving? And so when you ask the question, all right, what do you prefer? I no, we walk into an environment, understand the environment, large or small, and that's the team. Let's go be effective. And one of the things that I'm really steadfast on right now is that I have my children that are, I have teenagers, and I know when they're not teenagers, in their 20s, and but they're working and they're grinding and they're learning. And one of the things I think is important, that they see some of that same work ethic from me. To an extent, I also want to spend a lot of time with them, but I think that they start to realize, like this podcast, my daughter and her friends will listen to this podcast. So I just referenced my daughter. So, so from that end, I think that's when I look at make my mark, I want to make my mark and for my friends and my family, and for them to see that this is life. This is what you do. You get up every day and you give it the best that you got.
It's I often say my greatest accomplishment in life will not be what I achieve, but what I help someone else achieve.
Yeah, exactly.
And it sounds, whenever I say it, or whenever I write down some of these things in the way that I do a mentoring program, and I've helped, I've been mentored as well. It's a continuous process, right? And it's funny, I start to think, I'm like, oh, if I start writing this stuff down, it's really cool to be able to share, but then I'm going to end up being like, what do they call it? The fortune cookie Twitter VCs who just go on there and they write threads about, I've learned I've talked to 500 CEOs, and this is what I've learned. Thread,
Right.
But the amazing thing is, we do now have the ability to have a much greater continuous and direct impact on people because of the way we can communicate differently than like you by the rarity of the opportunity and your choice to take it on, got to meet one of the most fantastic sort of leaders and creators. Clayton Christensen is widely read and widely respected. And I have a friend of mine, and I was joking about something. I said I'm like the guy from A Beautiful Mind, but of technical marketing. And he's just like, you're not gonna believe. I says, I went to school and John Nash was one of my professors. I'm like, oh wow, it's the opportunity to be there is different. But the other problem with abundance is also the ability to find focus. And right now, it's like when you look at your wall of books and you see like I've got 200, books, and effectively they're all the same middle chapters and just different intro and outro for a lot of business books or whatever. But I still read them all, and I still like. But most people, they've got the internet, they've got YouTube, they've got masterclass, they've got this, they've got school. We have so much available, but then we don't leverage it. Like we don't listen. Like, I read everything that my dad ever wrote, right? And like I sat with him as a kid building systems. That's how I got into this stuff, is because like he was learning at night. And so I'm like, well, my dad's going to learn. I'm going to sit beside him, and as long as it doesn't bother him, and then what happened, I was 12 years old learning DBase, and then I got a job at 15 years old.
Right.
Doing data entry because it was on a DBase 3 system. And I was the only 15-year-old kid in anywhere. I lived in a small like farm town, and I was the only person other than my dad in that town that knew DBase. And so it was just so funny that that's how I got the job. And then I got into like systems development and, diverged, later on for years, but, and then came back to technology. But again, it's like the reason why I say this is just hearing that, like your kids will take the time to listen to what you said, not from your mouth, but like they'll go back and like, hey, dad was on a podcast, let's check it out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an impact. That's a profound impact.
It's funny. One of the things I was excited about on this podcast was the fact that, my youngest son, as we hit the pandemic, naturally was trying to keep himself busy. And he really, you're going to laugh in a second, he really got into coffee.
Nice.
Okay. You know where I'm going with this. And so, as a dad, I'm like, all right, let's get into coffee. I wasn't even drinking coffee at the time. And we got a coffee machine, and and then from the coffee machine, we decided to up the ante a little bit, and we got a grinder, and we were buying beans from little boutique shops, right? And we were tasting a little bit. And then I got into coffee. Now I'm into coffee, and I got a machine that grinds and it brews, and and I froth my milk, and then we were buying beans from 4 or 5 different outlets all over the country and shipping it. And again, this was how we were entertaining ourselves. And he became the barista of the family. And he wasn't drinking it, but he was making it. And I would say, I'll take a mocha. And my wife would say, I'll take a vanilla latte. And then my other son would say, I'll take Americano. And all of a sudden the barista was just in action. And we'd have family over, and everyone would say, make us coffee. And so fast forward, he's not into coffee anymore. He's done with coffee, doesn't want anything to do with it. And I'm stuck in my coffee machine. Right?
And you've lost your barista. No more. I've got a double half cap for Rob.
Oh yeah.
Rob.
Oh yeah.
Yelling across the kitchen.
So I'm making my own coffee, and, but he's still over my shoulder every once in a while, giving me a little bit of advice and pulling up stuff on YouTube. So I will give your coffee a plug. I am going to order it and put it up against some of the other guys that I've started to build some relationships with, and we'll see how it goes. And that, leads back to Akita with smart coffee makers and what we'll see in the home. And I do want to make sure that everyone listening, if you have a free moment, go to our YouTube channel. You go to YouTube and just type in BrainChip Inc. And
I was gonna say we'll have the links as well. I'll try
Yeah,
and remember to put them in the show notes as well for folks.
we have these videos that we've put together that really show you where this is all going, on smart home and some of the devices and applications we will all find customary in our homes over the future. And I'm going to reel it back now that I said that, and I'll tell you a funny story. If you ever bump into anyone that knows me, that really knows me, and you say that Rob Telson, they will ask you, have you had a burger with Rob?
Nice.
So I just want you to realize that there's a potential that could happen.
I'm a
And
burger aficionado, so I'm gonna take you up on that, Rob.
okay, I'm going to drop my California dude on you. Is I'm a burger guy too, and I've
Nice.
had a lot of burgers. So in back in the day, it was a very intense negotiation in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, and we had a client or a customer, that future customer at the time, but then became a customer, that wasn't being very receptive to the negotiation. And as we were sitting there having this discussion, and I had a team of about 6 people, he had a team of about 6 people, we were 4 hours into this discussion and we were getting nowhere. And we flew all these people up for this meeting. I mean, this was supposed to be the deal. And I, at the time, kind of made up, hey, look, I'm really into burgers. And we're in a town, we've never been here. I've got my team. Why don't we take a 2-hour break? Why don't I take my team and give me a burger recommendation? We'll go get some burgers and we'll meet back. And the guy on the other side said, you like burgers? I love burgers. As a matter of fact, I'm writing a book on burgers. And he said, well, if that's the case, I want to take you to my favorite burger place. And we left everyone there in the room and we went off and we had burgers and we had some French fries and a couple of sodas, and an hour and a half later, we had closed the deal, right? And so that stuck with me everywhere I went, and everyone that has bumped into me in my professional career has kind of stuck to this. Oh, Rob, I got to take you to this burger place. Oh, Rob. And that has led to burgers in Taiwan, burgers in China, burgers in Korea, burgers in Europe. And I learned over time to very graciously say, when I'm in a foreign country, I will eat the food of choice, not burgers. Burgers
Nice.
are here. So I ended up writing a book for a close friend of mine on burgers, because this person had experienced a lot of burgers with me, as well as my wife. My wife has experienced almost every burger with me. But the first book I wrote, I dedicated to my buddy, and my wife was like, "Are you kidding me? You didn't dedicate this book to me?" I'm like, "Ooh, I missed on that one." And it was for his 50th birthday. But yeah, I can hang when it comes to burgers and talk about burgers, and anyone out there interested in giving me some advice on burgers, I'll take it and potentially experience it.
Well, and if we think of, like I said, this is why when I listen to your podcasts and the content that you create, and inevitably any of the discussions that you have with folks, this is why I latched on to what's going on with BrainChip and the potential there, and it's incredible. So you've got a choice to like go to a team, and a team that it's a beautiful thing, because teams, especially in startups, at different phases of organizations, they're very dynamic. And what you end up having to make sure that you do is you find this kind of like top ends, like that's that vision, what's the reason why we're here. And that's the thing you say, like, I mean, Donald Miller's sort of fancy is what he calls the
Yeah.
story brand. And
Yeah.
it's so easy when you get used to it, and you start to hear it come out, but you realize like it's much more than that thing. Because I've gone into many companies and I see the thing behind the administrator's desk at the front, and I see the stuff printed on the walls, and you realize that the only person that took that in was the person that painted it.
Yeah.
It's not reflective of the culture. The culture is how you will deal with it if the walls were white. The culture is how they
Yeah.
behave when you're not looking. And so, knowing why you're doing what you do, what's your vision, your guiding principle, and then taking this and then being able to have, yeah, like I said, a fantastic technology that's in an exciting area of opportunity. But it's also probably a fun challenge because it's not massively like the type of solutions that you're able to enable are still being developed. They're still in a lot of research areas. So it'll be neat. In 10 years, you're gonna be look back and say, like, we did that, like
Yeah.
you're it's cool to see that. But it's also it's a very interesting dynamic of being in organizations where you're selling something where like they're gonna get this one day, and then they're
Yeah.
gonna look back and they're gonna be like, "Oh yeah, when he explained it to me, now it totally makes sense."
It's pretty impactful. And the amazing thing about Akita, it is wide and deep in regards to applications and problems we're going to solve. And it's this is a unique. We can only say so much, but it's an exciting time. And as you said, in these types of technologies, when you look out in the future, when you look out of where you're going and how you're going to get there, and the impact that you're going to make, um, my gut tells me that BrainChip's going to be impactful, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but it's a lot of fun, and it's going to be a good ride. I'm looking forward to it.
And it's especially, to go to a first principles approach in developing a solution is amazing because, we look at any competitive landscape, and it's quite often the first thing that most people will do is just turn around, yeah, and
Yeah.
sort of head for the door and look for another opportunity because it's a big challenge. But that's what it is. You choose first principles to attack a problem in a specific way, do so provably, and then find people that can take that and give it an application, give it a place in which it can be leveraged, and then ultimately see as that comes to fruition. So yeah, it's exciting. What was the most exciting surprise you had after, you were like, okay, I'm at BrainChip, I like the idea, and when did it suddenly go, you're like, oh, hang on a second, what was that thing that really kicked in for you?
Yeah, one of the things we haven't really talked about is the learning on the device. And for those that are new to artificial intelligence, and I brought it up earlier on this podcast, is the fact that the training a device, teaching it what to look for, and then process that information is not trivial. It is extremely complex. It requires data scientists, research scientists, and it requires a lot of time, 6 months, a year, and so on. So having the ability to have a device where we can add a feature to it, add my face, your face, and then use that for facial detection or for image detection or in a vehicle or something to that extent on the fly is huge. And so I think it was day 2, day 3, one of the engineers said, "Hey, do you want me to do a demo of Akita for you?" I said, "Sure." I sat down and he started putting some stuff in front of it. And it was recognizing everything really quickly, very low power. And okay, this is pretty cool. Yeah. And then I said, well, what if I want to take a baseball and put it in front of Akita? And it was using a data set that had no idea what baseball was. And he said, sure, no problem. Put it up there. You trained it on the device, and all of a sudden baseball is now part of the whole data set. And I'm taking the baseball and I'm throwing it through the image. It's picking it up as it moves through. I'm like, wow, that's really responsive. And fast forward, we just did a presentation about a week ago where we were teaching Akita beer bottles on the fly, different beers, different brands, and then pulling them in and out of the screen and showing the viewers that, hey, look, it's recognizing it really quickly. But we decided to show Akita 2 beers from the same brand that the label and image was so similar to each other that it would confuse other devices. And we were able to recognize it. We were able to process it quickly. And the whole on-chip training thing is mind-blowing, and it will become impactful for all these, from industrial applications through automotive, through consumer applications in the future. So that's the one thing that I get really excited about.
Yeah, that's it. Like on-chip learning is, this is it. This is where amazing things now are possible, because I literally just I'm overly excited by it, because it's just the potential is incredible. And this is where I've been lucky recently. We've had a lot more folks. We've sort of been diving in a bit more on machine learning and some of the capabilities. And then you realize, like, it itself is a fairly small community relative to, it's very much in the research phase, so much so compared to, the broad computing frameworks, so when you start to show them these capabilities and you hear about how they're trying to solve the problem, they're solving it in papers. It's still stuff that's being submitted as research phase, and yet they can take that blackboard or whiteboard theory now, and they can literally put it into place now, because like you said, Akita has this capability. And you're like, okay, cool. This is no longer just, what is the theory of driving cars gonna, self-driving cars gonna be? Like, all right, let's show you.
Well, the other thing is that and this just happened the other day, and my guys were really excited. They called me into a room, like, Rob, you got to take a look at this. I highlighted earlier, not being dependent upon the cloud to do your processing. And there's a company out there that has a phone that most of us have, or a lot of people have, that has a software update coming out. And they talked about the fact that if you put your phone in airplane mode, you now can run their assistant on device without being dependent on the cloud, providing you more privacy and security. And my guys are jumping up and down going, we do that, but we don't do it in software. We do it in hardware. I mean, we're onto something here. I'm like, we are. And, and that's the other thing that you'll see. There's a lot of applications in software. And for those that are listening, there's a lot of great AI functionality in software, but it's in software. And what that means is it consumes a lot of energy. It consumes a lot of power, because
RIP battery, because there's if you're solving it in software only, I've got bad news for what the power consumption levels are.
Exactly. So when we talk about edge devices, and we talk about all this stuff that's dependent on being independent and functioning without consuming a lot of power, software is a problem. So at the end of the day, so we look at this, and we look at what this leading technology company is doing, and we say to ourselves, we're doing the right things. We are doing the right things. We're just going to continue to march down our path and execute. And it's, like I said before, it's the tip of the iceberg.
And it is, and it's amazing what we can do, and the potential is fantastic. And first of all, thank you, Rob. This has been really fun. For folks that wanted to reach you to chat further and learn more about BrainChip, like I said, we'll have links to the site. We'll put up a link to the YouTube.
Thank you.
And what's the best way if folks want to get in contact?
Yeah. So if you go to www.brainchip.com, there's a link for information. You can fill that out, and it will go directly to our sales team. Most likely I'll get a look at it as well. You can reference that you were part of DiscoPosse, and I will personally respond to you and start dialogue. You can also go through the sales link at www.brainchip.com. You can contact us through LinkedIn. You can contact us through Twitter at BrainChip_Inc. But for those that are curious, I really, really want to emphasize we're using YouTube as our platform for education and understanding of the company and who we are. So subscribe to our YouTube channel at BrainChip Inc. And that way you'll be updated every single time we have a new video, a new presentation. And when this is uploaded, I'm sure this will be on our YouTube channel as well. But those are the best ways to reach us. And we'd love to talk to you and educate you more about BrainChip and what we're doing. But Eric, thank you very much for having me. And this conversation was great. Thank you.
Nice.